Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are really privileged to have the amazing speakers, MuleSoft Ambassador Rajesh. He's been an ambassador for many years now. Our wonderful PMM Aston and our PM Ratisha, who are going to cover CloudHub 2.0 and making the transition from CloudHub 1. So with that, a little housekeeping. I have opened the Q&A tab. If you look at the bottom right hand of your screen, there's a Q&A section. Click on that and you can input all of your questions here. The general chat is sometimes hard to keep up with all the questions that come in. So please try to use the Q&A tab as much as possible so that we can ensure we get to all of your questions at the end. And if we can't get to all of the questions, we'll make sure to follow up after the fact as well. With that, I am just going to go behind the scenes and pass this off to Aston, Rajesh, and Ratisha. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Can everyone hear me and see my screen? Just double check.
Yes, Aston. Yes.
Fabulous. Thank you, Rajesh. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the session today. Upgrade your Mule, making the transition to CloudHub 2.0. So thanks for the intro already, Sabrina. My name's Aston Whiteling. I'm the Senior Product Marketer here. We're joined today by Ratisha Padmanabhan, who is also Director of Product Management covering CloudHub. I think behind the scenes, maybe in the chat, we have Niku Parente, who is also a Senior Product Manager covering CloudHub CloudHub 2 infrastructure. But yeah, I'm thrilled to say we have a MuleSoft Ambassador extraordinaire, really the star of the show, I would say, on the call today, Rajesh, who's an enterprise architect at Tata Consultancy. But yeah, he's a MuleSoft extraordinaire user. So I just wanted to say, hey, Rajesh, do you want to just quickly introduce yourself, give a bit of background about yourself before we dive in?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Myself, Rajesh. I am a lead MuleSoft architect, work for TCS, based out of London. I have around 18 years of experience. And last to 10 years, more than 10 years, I was working with the Anypoint platform, where I've done the multiple platform setups with the different deployment topologies. It could be on-premise or cloud or app as CloudHub 1.0 or 2.0, the recent one which was released, and RTF hybrid solutions. And on top of that, the C4E. I have done a couple of C4E setups also for my experience. Yeah, is more about my experience with respect to the Anypoint platform. On top of that, I'm very active member in the MuleSoft community. Most of my MuleSoft community team knows me very well. I'm, as already Ashton mentioned very well, that I'm a ambassador, hold the title ambassador, and written a couple of articles, and I've done a lot of meetups as a speaker. Yeah, more or less this of me. Thank you. Thanks, Ashton.
Thank you, Rajesh. And yeah, thanks for being here. Really excited to hear you talk. Everyone, we're going to hear from Rajesh in a little bit. But first, well, here's the agenda of everything we're going to discuss today. I'm going to kick things off, kind of just set the baseline and talk about what CloudHub 2 actually is, why now is the right time to upgrade, and then I'll be passing the baton over to Rajesh. He's going to give you the boots on the ground info, the nit and the grit, talking about the business value as well as the technical value, diving into what I'm going to talk about, but in even more detail, which I think you guys are going to really enjoy. He's then going to pass over to Ratisha, who's going to give us some roadmap updates for CloudHub 2, and then we'll transition into a sort of fireside chat. And what that means is that Ratisha is going to sort of interview Rajesh, pick his brains, really get to all the juicy details of everything he's done with MuleSoft and upgrading to CloudHub. And then we want to hear your questions as well. You have a lot of questions around this upgrade, so we're going to open it up to an audience-based Q&A as well at the end. So yeah, without further ado, let's kick things off. So as I said, I'm going to start and talk a little bit about what CloudHub 2 actually is. I'm going to start pretty low level from an architectural perspective, and then I'm going to abstract quite a lot. That's the journey I'm going to take you on right now. But to just kick things off for some people who may not be familiar with CloudHub 2 or CloudHub in general, essentially, if you look at the bottom, CloudHub is a shared space virtual private cloud, which contains what we refer to as replicas. These house worker nodes, which are the Mule runtime instances that execute all the Mule applications that you deploy and run on MuleSoft. So that's kind of like the managed service aspect of CloudHub, but it also, of course, it's managed service, but you can control it and tailor it to whatever, your specifications. And we do that by decoupling the control plane, which is the plane that gives you access to things like the anypoint monitoring and the logs, the object store, the runtime manager, so you can manipulate the runtime, deploy things on anypoint exchange, so you can share your Mule assets across your business, as well as the access management controls, which let you control who has access to those Mule applications. So that's the technical architectural definition. Abstracting away from that, just highlighting a few features of what make CloudHub 2 kind of stand out as a platform. We have those replicas. Those are those containerized sort of instances, those workers of that help run your Mule applications, very lightweight instances that enable running those Mule apps, super powerful. It's a shared global, we have shared global regions, and that means, wherever you are, wherever you want to deploy these Mule applications, you can, and you'll have, availability and performant Mule applications. It's multi-tenant, so it supports control, supports across the control and runtime planes, and then it's also highly available, highly scalable. Of course, we offer, as part of the managed service, some high availability, and then we have some innovations around scaling as well that deal with, those fluctuating demand patterns as those Mule apps are, being requested. So that's, again, the kind of the technical definition, but I just want to abstract once more and say that CloudHub 2 is really an enterprise-ready runtime platform. Of course, CloudHub 1 has been around for a while. CloudHub 2 was the new kid on the block, but we've really invested a lot of innovation in order to make CloudHub 2 this really remarkable enterprise-grade runtime platform. And in fact, we've stopped contributing innovation resources towards CloudHub 1. All of our focus is now on CloudHub 2. And I guess this session, and broadly speaking this year, is part of this journey we're undergoing at MuleSoft to really support the transition of our customers onto CloudHub 2. It's a huge goal for us here in the platform services team, and that kind of all starts now. But why wouldn't you want to go to CloudHub 2.0? It's a platform that we've taken essentially all of the learnings that we had from CloudHub 1. We improved, everything that around the deployment, monitoring, management, governance, and security of CloudHub 1, and we've built upon that. We've innovated upon that with a new kind of architecture in order to create this new platform, while still maintaining the core tenets of CloudHub, which is it's fully managed, it's an enterprise-ready solution, and it's highly available. I'd just like to dive into those pillars briefly and give you a little taste of what that actually means. So when we say fully managed, it's quick time to value. Everything's UI driven from a configuration perspective. You can really minimize the environment setup time. You don't have to mess around with any of that. It's very much a seamless experience. It's lightweight but powerful. It's container based. We'll talk about that a lot and like the Kubernetes of it all as we go throughout today's presentation. But what that essentially means is that you can get all the benefit from that containerized architecture to get really highly performant applications and really fast scaling. But you also have control. You have complete control of this managed service. That's things like ingress load balancers that you can configure, and it's again the auto scaling, exportable logs. You're in full control despite the managed nature of the service. And then the unified runtime platform, really important, really interesting feature. It's a consistent user experience, and again, you're benefiting from that Kubernetes architecture. You don't have to have a Kubernetes practice. That's something that we've done for you essentially, and you can just reap the reward of it. When I say enterprise ready, or when we say enterprise ready, I should say, it's kind of three-pronged approach. That's the advanced monitoring. As these application networks continue to expand in complexity, monitoring is going to be more important than ever. And we're making advancements there, specifically with CloudHub in mind, things like our telemetry exporter, our open telemetry based, our distributed tracing. I'll talk about those in a bit more detail in a little bit, but advanced monitoring is a key part of that enterprise ready story, and as those application networks continue to get more complex. Security, of course, is always a baseline in everything we do at MuleSoft, but with CloudHub 2, even more enhanced security features, things like egress control and namespace level isolation. Again, as these networks get more complicated, it's important to maintain that baseline level of really powerful security. And then also seamless scaling. I'm going to sound like a broken record. crazy application networks, scaling, rapid scaling, bringing in different new apps. You're scaling things, you need to be able to meet up with the demand that's associated with that scaling as well. And that's things like horizontal auto scaling and increased limit for app sizes. There's a lot of scalability built into the platform. And finally, high availability. That a resilient architecture. I mean, high availability is of course kind of table stake, but even more so, we don't expect applications to ever go down. And that was definitely a tenet that was in mind when building CloudHub 2. That's why we have this resilient kind of service-oriented architecture, decoupling that control plane and the runtime plane to improve the durability of the service. And things like intelligent clustering really helps decrease the risk involved when you're processing these applications are processing and your integrations. So again, I hopefully illustrated some of the value from a foundational perspective of CloudHub at its core and communicated that through talking about some of the different features. But why specifically is now the right time to upgrade to CloudHub 2.0? CloudHub 2.0, it's that consistent, scalable user experience, and we've kind of based this journey and what we see the journey moving from CloudHub 1 or moving from another platform onto CloudHub 2 as being oriented around, again, three sort of core principles, and that's efficiency, security, and the future-proof kind of innovation available on CloudHub. Again, I'm just going to dive into all three, and then you'll have had enough about me to hand over to Rajesh. But yeah, just talking about efficiency, it's even faster to deploy. So it's even CloudHub was already pretty quick. We've worked and invested to make it an even faster experience to get up and running with your CloudHub apps. It's easier to configure. We spent a lot of time working on the workflow processes of deploying these applications and making it really easy to configure all these different points of control that you need when deploying these complex architectures. And scalability, another really important feature, things like horizontal auto scaling built on Kubernetes. That's a innovation that we're only able to get thanks to the re-architect around Kubernetes. You can have things like horizontal auto scaling. You can have the scalability derived from container-based architectures, really getting that value from efficiency. Security, I touched on this a little bit already, but I just want to re-emphasize. Of course, it's a baseline for MuleSoft, as I say, for all our different deployment options. But with CloudHub 2, we've been able to leverage, again, that new architecture to give you even more control. Things like customized outbound firewalls for those firewall rules for those privates at that private space level, even more tools, different tools that let you, control the security and access even more. And that's also in tandem with like comprehensive role-based access authority and things like SSH access as well. So security, definitely a core tenet and something we've doubled down on in order to give you even more enterprise-grade controls. And then finally, the future-proofing. I talked about this already a little bit, but the monitoring to double down. Tracing and distributed tracing is the index around which all future monitoring is probably going to be built. That's the kind of the bet that we're placing, doubling down with tracing. But that tracing has some barriers to entry that we've removed by working with CloudHub. If your app that you're deployed on CloudHub are already configured for tracing, and then telemetry exporter as well, built on the Open Telemetry standard, lets you kind of include MuleSoft into your wider observability ecosystem. Again, both these features only possible and only available on CloudHub 2.0 or RTF as well. The Kubernetes ecosystem, of course, I've talked about the architecture from an architectural perspective, but we're also placing a bet on Kubernetes and continuing to keep pace with the innovation. In that community, in that ecosystem, as those innovations come out, we'll be bringing them in to CloudHub 2. And speaking of bringing innovations to CloudHub 2, that's where they're going to be first when it comes to MuleSoft. Of course, we support all our different deployment options, but CloudHub 2 is where the innovations are going to come first. It's the bleeding edge of as far as platforms are concerned for MuleSoft feature innovations. So you've heard enough from me, probably. I now get the pleasure, to hand over to Rajesh, who's going to be talking about a few of those things, but also just diving into the knit and the grit, the boots on the ground experience. So that's enough from me. Take it away, Rajesh.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Aston. Yeah, I think Aston explained clearly that what are the benefits from the overall the benefits, the features comes from the CloudHub 2.0. I'll just try to dig into the benefits with respect to the technical and from the business point of view based on the experience. So for the CloudHub 2.0, as you know that it is a container based. So that was one of the main thing which follows the container based architecture runtime fabric, which basically isolation is one of the main thing which separates the application from other application. Which sorry, I'm audible?
We can hear you, Rajesh.
Okay. I'm sorry. I thought something like okay. So as I mentioned, is a container-based architecture, as Ashton explained, right? So which helps the isolation, which enhances the security, so that because of the isolation separate from one app to another app, and even though separate the dependencies or artifacts to maintain. So that was a main thing. And another thing is a faster is a spin up. So the starting of the container, stopping of the application, or adding the replicas, it could be very fast compared to the earlier. So which meets the demand on the need basis for it will match the demand. So that is another one of the main technical advantage with respect to the CloudHub 2.0. And then the vCore utilization. As you know, in the CloudHub 1.0, the vCore, one of the major thing, the consumption point of view, where in CloudHub 2.0 you have more granularity. I can have the 0.1, 0.2, 0.51. So if my data migration or data integration, which require the more resourcing power, or the CPU things, which is required more to process one, and after the one, we used to directly jump to 2, then 4. So there is no more granularity with respect to the vCore utilization. In CloudHub 2.0, that is one of the main thing they try to do. So after one, you can utilize the 1.5 to 2.5 up to 4. So that was one of the main advantage to have the vCore utilization. And then enhanced security. I think as we are more leveraging the private space here rather than the VPC. Again, the private space is like a logical term of the private space, I can say, which is based on the region, which are the distributed region which is selected, which comes default with the load balancer. Earlier, we used to set up the DLB in the CloudHub 1.0, and which requires a lot of setup with respect to the certificate installation, configuring the inbound, outbound policies, and managing the static IP. I remember one of the pain point was the managing the static IP management. Say if you're allowing any SaaS services, we don't have all the IP addresses from the apps, right, which will be dynamic, and is very difficult to manage the static IP management, which is streamlined as part of the CloudHub 2.0. The private space will have the static 3 inbound and outbound IP addresses, which makes comfortable for the apps to IP whitelisting or enabling the allow list. Then as it comes with the default to ingress load balancer, which comes with the default to whitelisting the policies, we can control at the ingress load balancer level itself. So that could be another security point of view, good changes. And yes, is high availability, the built-in redundancy. The CloudHub 2.0, the platform services. What are the platform services to run the CloudHub 2.0 in the backend? In the runtime, what are the platform services runs in the runtime, which have the redundancy? At least 2 data centers, at least in 2 data centers, which will be running. That means anytime if any outage comes into the one data center, the platform makes sure that it does not impact to the users. So that's where it will make sure that always the platform is up and running. That is one. Yes, geographically distributed data centers. Yes, as is in the backend, the AWS, 12 plus data regions, distributed data centers. It could be US or it could be EU. Again, with respect to the local data governance. For example, say if I want to deploy into the Europe region, yes, it has aligned to the EU data related. If it is the US, with respect to the EU related government data cloud, so with respect to those data governance rules, it was aligned. So more or less the control plane with respect to the US, it will be deployed in the US. If it is the EU, the corresponding control plane will be there in the hosted in the EU region. So it is geographically distributed, and we can have the high availability the similar way to deploy into the different regions or within the region multiple replicas. Even the managing the replicas was much better in the CloudHub 2.0 compared to 1.0, just because of your RTF, the container based architecture. So which could be typically the technical benefits, I can say. So some of the benefits, like as you mentioned, the resource utilization. Because of this is a minimal downtime, as it maintains a 0 downtime. That means whenever the application is restarting the app in the runtime manager, it will make sure the existing app is up and running Once my replica, the other application is started and is working fine, then it'll be up. Then the old one will be down. This way it will ensure that whatever the traffic I'm getting, the user will not have any disruption. So I can say it's like a 100% up and running the time. That's why I'll call it a zero downtime. So this could be another advantage with the CloudHub 2.0 from the technical point of view. Can you go to the next slide, Asta? Yeah, we talked about some of the features or the functionalities, the benefits with respect to the technical. Coming to those when I convert to the business point of view, of course, one is the horizontal auto scaling, which was enabled in the CloudHub 2.0. Whenever one of the pain point is, say, any for data migration or data integration, or especially from a batch kind of things, specific times, my CPU usage will be high. Then someone has to come. So okay, I'll be setting up the alerts. I get an alert saying that okay, after 84% or after 90% of the CPU usage, I'll get an alert. So that someone comes, I can increase the vCore. I will monitor. If it thinks that the load is very heavy from the APIs or the interface, I may go and increase my vCores. Instead of doing that, it is horizontal auto scaling is enabled. We can create a certain threshold. So after 80%, maybe you increase the vCore to 0.2 or 0.5 or 1 vCore. Once the traffic is down, again come to less than 80%. Again you go back. This way, dynamically manage my auto scaling without having the manual intervention. That is definitely a big addition to the CloudHub 2.0. And then, as I mentioned, the quick setup, right? So in the CloudHub 2.0, I'm sure most of you would have experienced setting up the VPC, configuring the load balancer, the corresponding certificates management and all thing. It takes a lot of time. So of course, from the GUI point of view, it is easy to do, but we need a lot of people to get involved and things to done, making the things up and running. But in CloudHub 2.0, the setting of the private space and ingress load balancer, which makes, I can say typically maybe 25% of the time what we used to spend earlier. It has speed up the things very well. And even the certificates management. Earlier in CloudHub 1.0, there was no auto certificates. In 2.0, we get the default certificate. So all the communication was happening. Even though if you don't maintain the certificates, even if you don't maintain the your own domain specific certifications, still all the data transformation, the communication which is happening is through secure TLS 1.3 protocol. So it's a secured information. The data was encrypting and transferring from the consumer to gateway to source. So it ensures that proper data compliance is aligned to the industry standards. And the quick setup, I talked about that, which drastically improves your setting up the private space. And of course, as again I mentioned, it is a globally distributed data center. So each private space, I can select the different regions. So there is no limitation that one business group, as again is a multi-tenant, there is no restriction that one business group should contain only one region. I can have the multiple private spaces distributed into different data center. So one it could be one it could be APAC. Within APAC, I can select something like a Singapore or some other region. But in other Europe, I can select the Frankfurt. So I can have the distribution data centers within the single private space if required. Global reach, I think we just covered. So these are the something I could see there's a benefits from the business point of view. When I convert to those technical things, what are I converted? If I speak that, fasting of the implementation and easy to learn. So there is no earlier we used to spend a lot of time on the CloudHub 1.0, and of course the low latency and high performance. So I think these are the things, something from the business point of view. Yeah.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for that. Is that everything then, Rajesh? You good?
Yes.
Fabulous. Great. Okay. I think the next up, we're going to pass the baton over to Ratisha. Take it away.
Thanks, Aston. And it was great to hear from Rajesh, and I'm looking forward to the Q&A right after this. So Aston, if you can go into the next slide. So before getting into some of our near-term roadmap items, I want to talk about a quick refresher of recently delivered innovations on CloudHub 2. So essentially, it's a testament to the flexibility, the scalability, and performance that can be unlocked, from a modern microservice-based architecture. So firstly, like Rajesh also called out, we have launched a CPU-based horizontal pod auto-scaling for our CloudHub 2.0 customers. This is specifically available for customers of the new pricing and packaging because that's where it aligns the best, right? It's a usage-based pricing model. Horizontal pod auto-scaling allows you to, function in a usage-based model as well. So what it allows you to do is your applications can dynamically scale up and down to meet surges in demand in a matter of a couple of minutes, right? It happens completely in the runtime plane within configured limits on a per application basis. Next, CloudHub 2.0 has also added support for some highly requested advanced monitoring capabilities, one of which is OpenTelemetry-based telemetry exporter for traces. And we've also launched distributed tracing. So with this, you will be able to do fast troubleshooting, issue discovery, and quick remediation. Thirdly, non-HTTP protocol support. This one is mostly to support use cases such as HL7. It's primarily useful in the healthcare sector. It's a very important protocol to support. So what you can do is you can configure inbound firewall rules to enable your HL7 applications to directly receive MLLP traffic on TCP ports in CloudHub 2. And it is natively supported in the private space. So the administration around identifying available ports, the configuration happens through the private space UI. Like Aston was mentioning, our goal has been to provide a central UI-based configuration for infrastructure and network management. The other feature that we released was domain-based egress controls. So in addition to IPs and ports, you can also allow list certain domain names to control the application's outbound traffic. So cluster or network administrators can create domain-based rule groups at centrally at the private space level, and then the application developers can choose either the default rule group or you can add custom rule groups while deploying an application based on the application's use case. So it both centralizes the configuration of egress firewall controls at the private space level, while also giving individual app developer teams more granular flexibility at the per app level. And finally, speaking about better controls, for customers that are sensitive to when your applications are patched, as you know, in CloudHub 2.0 and in CloudHub 1.0, right, you could always opt into early application upgrades, or you could rely on MuleSoft managed patching, which happens at a set cadence. Similarly, to provide the same kind of predictability, we've also aligned infrastructure upgrades and infrastructure patching with the same cadence. So we're following the same when your apps get upgraded is before that is when your infra also gets upgraded. However, for customers that are sensitive to when this happens, you can opt in for an early infra upgrade as well. And an additional functionality that we added recently was the ability to schedule your infra upgrades. So rather than having to click and do the infra upgrade immediately, you can schedule it for a specific window if you want to minimize any potential impact on some mission critical applications. So with that, let me go into some of our upcoming features that we are actively working on. Firstly, this one has been a much requested feature, snapshot support. So this is for customers that want to be able to overwrite applications in Exchange during the development and the testing phase of their SDLC. Basically, as you all know, CloudHub 2.0 requires you to deploy publish your applications into Exchange first. But during the testing phase, rather than having to increment versions for each small line item change that you make, and it could result in some version sprawl, what you can instead do is you can leverage Exchange snapshots. And then when you deploy these snapshots into CloudHub 2.0, every time you make a change, you override the same version. All you need to do is retrigger a deployment, and CloudHub 2.0 will pull in the latest binaries that you've made tweaks on. So it helps you with version control during your sandbox testing phases. Secondly, for our customers in our advanced or titanium tiers, I saw a question around this, like, are some capabilities only available for our advanced tiers? On those lines, an enterprise ready feature is you will be able to scale up beyond 8 replicas to up to 16 replicas. This is something that we're working on at this point. So you get improved horizontal scalability, even in comparison to CloudHub 1.0, which was limited at just 8 replicas. And lastly, and most importantly, I think we've received some questions around this as well. We are working on providing an in-product UI-driven experience to do an in-place upgrade of your CloudHub 1.0 dedicated VPCs into the CloudHub 2.0 equivalent, which is basically a private space. So without requiring to re-establish your connections. So I can double click into a little bit of what we're envisioning here when we say the in-product experience through the upgrade tooling. What we want to do is, firstly, we want to start by helping you learn about CloudHub 2.0, the various steps that you need to take during the upgrade. This is also in our documentation, but we want to provide a UI-driven experience for you to learn in a central place. Once you learn about the upgrade, thereafter, what our thoughts are, like we will provide you with information about any prerequisite steps that you may want to take to prep your CloudHub 1 configuration before it comes into CloudHub 2, which is mainly around, for example, if you're using VPC peering, you may want to transition that into a transit gateway. So we will provide you informative or warnings that says you might need to do these as prerequisite steps. And when you're ready, you will be able to initiate an in-place upgrade. What we're envisioning here is that if your VPC is eligible, which means if it has sufficient IPs remaining, we will allow you to reuse the existing VPC that you set up, which means you can preserve the same CIDR block, the connections, and the firewall rules that you had. So you don't have to go back to your central IT team to request a new CIDR block or go through the configuration again, which can be time consuming. So what we're allowing you to do is you can in place convert the VPC into a private space. And once the upgrade is completed, thereafter all your network changes can happen on the CloudHub 2 experience. So this basically helps you accelerate the duration of moving your infrastructure, which we've heard from a lot of our customers as the time-consuming part of the upgrade. And this also allows you to not have to require additional approvals, security approvals, to try and get new connections established. And thereafter, you can just start moving your applications over into the newly created private space. So that was essentially what I wanted to talk about. And now we can move into our most exciting section for today, which is I will be doing a Q&A with our MuleSoft ambassador, community member Rajesh, to learn more about his experience helping customers onboard onto CloudHub 2.0. So Rajesh, before we dive into how you have helped customers transition, I'd love for our audience to learn a little more about you. Maybe you can talk us through how long you've been working with the MuleSoft ecosystem. What are the various deployment models that you've worked with that you have helped customers onboard onto?
Sure, Ritisha. I have around 18 years of experience, where last to 10 plus experience I can say. Mostly I was working with the Anypoint platform. So where I did the multiple platform setups. It could be CloudHub 1.0 or on-premise or hybrid. A couple of customers I did the RTF also. On top of that, recently in the last 2-3 years I can say, for large retail customers and manufacturing, I have done the C4E setup. Setups, and last year I did the one of the setup for the CloudHub 2.0. So I can say roughly from last 10 years I have good experience with respect to the setting of the platforms with the different deployment topologies and including the C4E setup.
That's awesome. So and you mentioned that apart from on-prem and RTF and CloudHub, you've also helped customers transition into CloudHub 2. Can you elaborate a little more on the customer experience that you've had around just transitioning customers into CloudHub 2.0?
Sure. So as I mentioned, right, I had a good experience with the 1.0, and recently for one of the global, I have done the global setup for one of the manufacturing customer. One of the manufacturing customer, where the customer was seeking to upgrade their existing systems for the better operational efficiency, data management, workflow, and one of the pain point was the governance. So of course, it was a phased approach. So where we did the initial consulting assessment kind of thing. So to understand what is their landscape and the architecture, your core systems, what are the core systems involved in the within the customer landscape, and then basically as part of the assessment, then which was followed by the migration and with the system integration. So of course the transaction was overall was a success, resulting as a enhanced efficiency. That was one of the main thing for the looking better data management and to streamline workflow for the customer. So it was a smoother process, but yes, we had a as a phase to approach, as I mentioned, that starting with the consulting assessment, then the planning, then we moved as a followed by the migration to the system integration.
I see. So one of the questions that we often, get asked from our customers that are planning the migration is, across the various steps, how long would it take to transition? I think it's a function of course, I realize it's a function of the customer's size, but maybe if you can give us an example, like customers that you've worked with roughly, what were the timelines for the various stages that you called out? Basically, until a customer was able to deploy their applications into CloudHub 2.0.
Sure. Yeah. I think you correctly quoted, Ritisha. So typically depends on the customer landscape and size. So basically whatever the infrastructure stays with the customer, how many regions they're supporting, then number of integrations, their core systems. But based on my experience, which I did, the recent one, the global one, typically it takes 14 to 15 weeks, I can say. So where again, as I mentioned, the phased approach, right? Maybe the consulting or assessment, so which takes 1 or 2 weeks understanding their as is architecture, core systems landscape, then how many interfaces we have to move, and the supporting. And one of the main thing is, say if they have the data centers, different data centers, we may need to have the establish the connectivity to their on-premise systems. You are establishing the number of private spaces. Of course, the CloudHub 2.0 made that was much easier compared to the 1.0, which again, as part of this first two consulting assessment, we'll try to create this understanding. Then we'll spend another 2 to 3 weeks planning and migration activity, the roadmap, the things to do, how many data centers, detailed develop your detailed architecture, review with your counterparts, get the sign off, and from the security also to that. Then the system integration or moving to the applications it may take another 3 to 4 weeks, depends on your number of apps, or depends on the number of the data centers you have the connectivity. And of course, post that we can start rolling out to the production. So again, yeah, as I mentioned, it is a phased approach, and it may take typically 14 to 15 weeks overall, based on my experience for the recent customer which I have done.
Got it. Okay, thank you. I think what resonates is that you mentioned connections is a big part of it, getting security approvals, and that's essentially what we're trying to help customers avoid having to redo during the upgrade from CloudHub 1 to CloudHub 2. That's essentially the crux of our VPC to private space upgrade tooling. Coming to industries, right? We've in fact organically had a lot of our financial services, healthcare customers that naturally see a lot of value in the new features, enhanced security, monitoring capabilities, and CloudHub 2.0. You mentioned manufacturing, so I'm also curious if you saw any trends among the customers that you helped, customers that would see value in CloudHub 2.0, if there were certain industries that you were focused on.
Yes. So majorly I focused on the recent times. Majorly I focus on the retail and manufacturing side. So when I say in the retail side, at least I have seen that with this transition, whether it could be your supply chain management or omni-channel integration or improving the operational efficiency, definitely that could be addition. For the manufacturing, what I can say, customer interaction, better data management. Overall, irrespective of the any industry, definitely the operational efficiency and data integration could be a major advantages with this maybe irrespective of any industry types.
Makes sense. Got it. Okay. And you also mentioned you've been working with customers on-prem, sometimes RTF, like I think hybrid on-prem. So what were some of the differences that you saw while, if you were to migrate a customer from on-prem to CloudHub 2.0, like differences, benefits, potential, roadblocks that you ran into? What were some of the changes that you saw?
Yeah, see, at least from the yeah, I think for the recent customers you're talking, right? So we did one for one of the on-premise migration also. So of course, when things comes to the on-premise, right, maintaining your infrastructure, security, and updating the patches and all. So that will be resource consumption, and which is a costly operation also. I think moving to the Cloud 2.0, which makes um, automatic updates, patch updates, stay up to latest to any patches or threats against that, and there is no inform maintenance and auto scale updates, which helps to things to move smoother. Focus only on the development activities. And as we see in the 2.0, right, with respect to the container based architecture and all, so I think that adds all advantage. Definitely is a big change when moved from the on-premise to CloudHub 2.0. But yes, it will be a great and it definitely is a sustainable solution for anyone to move. With respect to that, recently for one of the consulting, apart from the my delivery, I will focus majorly on the some of the pre-sales activities for any high level consulting with respect to the MuleSoft. For one of the customer, one of the manufacturer customer in Americas, they reached out to the for the migrating to the OpenJDK. We have suggested on top of that, moving to the CloudHub 2.0 is a great solution by enabling, by explaining the all out of the technical benefits and which you realize from the business point of view. So I think that was the yes, and even the customers agree to think about that and to proceed forward on the same lines. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, I think from on-prem to cloud up to, yeah, that resonates, right? I think most of our customers really prefer to have the fully managed experience. So it's worry-free management, but at the same time, while getting faster time to market, but at the same time, they also have custom controls, for enterprise customers on Cloud Hub if required. So that's definitely been a drawing factor. And what's interesting is you called out, OpenJDK Java 17. So, you mentioned that that's something that you would recommend, like clubbing the two together. So that's actually something that even we have seen in a lot of conversations, because Java 17 gives you enhanced performance, scale benefits that can be multiplied by moving into Cloud Up 2.0 at the same time. So curious if that's something that you have undertaken yet. Is that still at a recommendation stage? How is the Java 17 upgrade in combination with CloudHub 2 going?
The combination point of view, we are in the initial stage. In the assessment part of view, yes, they agreed, and we are doing the assessment. Typically, what is the time duration, number of interfaces, but definitely that is the advantage, as you will avoid the redundancy of testing and having the multiple patches. Because now the Java 17 is becoming as a mandate, as we know the lot of security issues with the Java 8 or performance changes, even a lot of third-party applications, they stop to supporting the Java 8. So that way, I think to align into that strategy, even the Mule started the Java 17, so which is good. So moving to the Cloud 2.0 and Java 7 at a time, as I mentioned, we are in the consulting stage. So we're trying to understand the number of integrations so that we're providing the timelines. Because moving to Java 8 could be easier, Java 17 could be simpler. But when I'm moving to the Cloud 2.0 from on-premise, we need to have a lot of setup to understand the data center setting and all. So we are in that evaluation phase, Ritisha.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. So for our viewers as well, from a Java 17 and Cloud Up 2 perspective, as you know, Cloud Up 2 provides enhanced scale. So for example, you can deploy larger sized applications. You have the ability to also choose more granular replica sizes if you needed larger memory. Then you could choose memory intensive replica sizes if you're on the new PNP and so on. So that's in general a good fit that we've been seeing our customers clubbing the two together. And now let's pivot a little, Rajesh. Let's talk about security. What are some of the key benefits that you see in CloudHub 2.0? From a security perspective, how do you see that differing from CloudHub 1.0?
From security point of view, I think I covered, right. CloudHub 2.0, of course, it was significant improvements with respect to the encryption, is the enhanced encryption and identity access management and compliance with industry standards. Of course, the CloudHub 2.0 provides one of the main thing is the default certificates automate updates. Earlier 1.0, if you want to have the your SSL encryption or the communication, we need to have our own domain certificates. It's mandate. So procure the certificate, installation, do the load balancer setup and all. That was tremendously changed in the 2.0. I can say that was a major improvement with the private space concept and having the automatic certificates, default one. So the user no need to maintain unless he needs his own domain specific certificates to as API endpoints. Otherwise, we can use the default endpoints. Still enables SSL encryption and follows your TLS 1.3 still. So that is one. And ingress load balancer. So ingress load balancer having the policies controlling your inbound outbound access, and the static IP management having a private space dedicated with 3 inbound IPs and 3 outbound static IPs. So we don't need to worry about managing the static IP addresses the way earlier we used to maintain the 1.0. So whenever my application starts, restarts, or redeploy, my IP address used to change. Then we need to speak to the consumer, say that my SaaS provider who is able to connect, change the IP address, update it, allow list. So I think that whole headache was taken in the CloudHub 2.0 and encryption. I think there are all these are like a couple of things I can see good improvements with respect to the security in the 2.0.
Got it. Yeah, thank you. I think that it's nice to hear an ambassador reinforce some of the thinking that's gone into several of the security features that we've added into CloudHub 2. Yeah, egress controls and then ingress logs. Like these are all really popular features that a lot of our customers come into CloudHub 2 specifically for. And another chunk of features that our customers, from enterprise customers especially, prefer CloudHub 2.0 for is monitoring. So curious, have you heard of the new, it's fairly recent, we've added support for tracing, open telemetry based traces exporter. Is that something that you've evaluated or explored yet? Something that you think you can leverage with your customers?
I have not used it. Yes, I heard about it. I have seen the blog and the presentation on that, but I have not used it. But it was interesting. Of course, leveraging that open telemetry in the CloudHub 2.0. Of course, what I have seen that understood based on the demo, they can gain the valuable insights into the application performance. So the monitoring side, in-depth observability, identity the bottlenecks, and instead of having the reactive monitoring, proactive monitoring, we can achieve with the alerts and all. So I think definitely I could see this is a great addition. And of course, I was planning to have something like a demo to my customers to see if we can leverage that as an additional one for the better observability. Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, actually, that was all that I had from a question standpoint. It's been super informative, Rajesh, to get your perspective, as our partner, as an ambassador on CloudHub 2.0. Aston, Niku, anything to add?
No, I mean, we have a load of audience questions, so I think we're running out of time. Probably switch to them, and I'll try and be like the moderator for these. I know some of them have already been answered, but we might double tap. There's one I saw that just came in the chat right now, which I think is a good one for Rajesh. It's from Andy, and he asks, what are the leading industries that are making the early transition to CloudHub 2? Who is blazing the trail? Is it Fins, financial services, others? I know you've had some experience. Like in your view, who are the people making the switch? Rajesh?
Sorry?
I'm sorry.
Sorry, Ashton.
Oh, did you? My apologies.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries. I'll ask again. Basically, the question was, who are the industries blazing the trail from your experience for CloudHub 2? Like, who do you mostly work with?
Basically, like I mentioned, right, maybe the manufacturing retail side industries. So majorly I worked with them. So I had a good opportunity to explore their Ashton.
Cool. Manufacturers blazing the trails. Okay, I'll switch over to the Q&A.
Manufacturing, yeah.
Okay. I know we've had a lot of questions about the upgrade tool as well coming out. Just to reiterate, that upgrade tool we're targeting for GA release by end of year. So you should have that available by the end of the year.
Maybe I see one question. One thing. I saw that, yes, with the CloudHub 2.0 and Java 17 migration, we have seen a lot of issues. Yes, with respect to that, even for the current customer where I work that, we have migrated a couple of APIs, not one project. I think a couple of projects we started migrating. Yes, as you know that the studio and corresponding the version, which got released sometime in the March. I think they promised the April, but I think we have received sometime in the end of the March. There are a lot of bug fixes, a lot of issues was there, but yes. And what I could see is proactively they were fixing the issues. Now, at least I can say that a lot of things got stabilized. Whether you talk about the schedulers, I remember scheduler was one of the pain thing, and do the key protector and all, there are some issues. but even the connectors were not supporting. But I can say now, as of now, I can say most of the apps are running with the Java 17 without any major issues. So at least I can say it is stabilized at a certain level to move to the next level from your dev or SAT to UAT and prod level. I just want to address that as we are already working on that too, Ritisha. So I just tried to.
Amazing. We appreciate that. Thank you. Ritisha, you saw a question as well you can answer. What was the one you were going to address?
Yeah, I'm looking at some notes on the chat, right? I think someone's asked, is it possible to reuse existing VPNs while, that's on the VPC while migrating to CloudHub 2? Yes, that's basically what we want to enable through the migration tooling. If you were to create a new, what we've seen some customers is while upgrading to CloudHub 2, they also see this as an opportunity to sort of re-architect and change the way in which you isolate your networks. So if you were to do that, then you will have to establish new connections. However, if you want to use the upgrade tooling that we are planning to provide, then there it will enable you to reuse the existing connections on the VPC when we do an in-place upgrade. And then I see another question in the chat. It says, like, does CloudHub 2 require separate licensing if our customer already has CloudHub 1 Titanium license? No, the same license essentially works. Like the vCores that customers have can be used interchangeably across CloudHub 1 and CloudHub 2. The VPC entitlements that you have, they are equivalent to private spaces on CloudHub 2. So you can either have a CloudHub 1 VPC or you can basically create a CloudHub 2 private space. The good news is you don't need some of the other, like you don't need DLB entitlements, static IP entitlements in CloudHub 2. This has basically been absorbed into the private space itself.
Addition to that, sorry, I just want to add another point with that too, Ritisha. Addition to that, if we are planning to move from 1.0 to 2.0, but we want to do a POC and have the phase-wise improvement, like I have 10 projects, but I don't want to take a risk of moving 10 projects at a time to the CloudHub 2.0. The one platform, as Ritisha mentioned, I can take the phase-wise. One project, you do a small POC where already your apps are running 1.0. Simultaneously, you can deploy even CloudHub 2.0 also. That means one environment, I can have the apps are running in the 1.0 and 2.0. Within 2.0, shared space, private space. So what I'm saying, without interrupting your business in the 1.0, still you can migrate smoothly to 2.0. And slowly you can start decommissioning the 1.0. So you don't need separate environment or separate instance to do that activity.
Correct. Yeah. So this is why we want to, reiterate that the upgrade tooling is for customers that want to have minimal touch during the upgrade. It is, again, it's what would work for a large majority of our customers, but there may be some customers that have, custom configuration. And we've seen a lot of customers that have already started, and several of them have also completed the migration. So it's also possible for you to do it self-serve without having to rely on the tooling. But if you wanted to, we also want to provide some in-product experience to ease the conversion. Any other questions that you're seeing that you want to highlight, Aston or Niku?
I was just answering one. I mean, you kind of addressed it. I saw that. So is this the right moment to upgrade to CloudHub 2, or should you wait for the migration tooling? I'd just like to reiterate, like, you should at least be, I think, having the conversations around upgrading to CloudHub 2. Obviously, the tooling, as Ritisha said, is going to make that process a little bit easier. But just even understanding when we start releasing like assets and talking about the tooling, understanding how that works with your instance is going to be really important. As we've said on this call today a few times, all the innovation is going to CloudHub 2. So if you want to take advantage of those new features, CloudHub 2 is the place to be. I would also encourage, we have, as I say, a CloudHub upgrade expert on the call in Rajesh. So if you have any specific project questions for me, we can just keep going through the Q&A.
No. I think, of course, all that innovations, whatever you mentioned are the features, definitely I think the CloudHub 2.0 will be entertaining. So I think it makes much sense from the business point of view for any customers to move into CloudHub 2.0 instead of leveraging a step with the 1.0.
I also see this one question that says benefits in terms of logging in CloudHub 2 compared to CloudHub 1. This is where, so this is not something that I added into our roadmap slide yet, but this is also something that's work in progress, which is MDC logging support, which is something that's been heavily requested, that's brought up quite a few times. It's not supported in CloudHub 1 either. It's done through the tracing module. Customers that use external log forwarders like external logging solutions can leverage MDC logging, but we are working on providing MDC logging support for CloudHub 2 applications in anypoint monitoring.
With respect to the logging, when you say, I just remember the thread dumps. I remember most of the times when you have some memory issues or some performance, some subbugging, typically we require the thread dumps, right? And the thread dumps, I remember people used to reach out to the support team, Cloud 1.0, or we have some API. So with the API, we have to, the platform APIs, with the token we used to get. Even the thread dump in the CloudHub 2.0 made very easy to get, as typically you see the logs, right? Application logs. There we'll have option to generate the thread dump for particular replica. For replica, you can get the thread dump. And I remember it was like a similar, the 30 days you'll have option to download your thread dump and to verify to debug the logs, your thread dump in the 2.0.
Fabulous. I saw another question talking about the hybrid transition and whether it causes complexity to go into CH2 rather than going to CH1. I think our line is, don't go to CH1. Again, we really want our customers, if you're thinking about making the transition, we want to emphasize we think that CH2 is the place to go. Just in the long run, it makes more sense considering the eventual end of life of CloudHub 1, which is, no official date yet, but it's a conversation that's happening internally here.
Right. And I mean, from a future-proofing standpoint, all of the innovation is going into CloudHub 2.0. If you are considering a migration now, we want to make sure you avoid multiple migrations in the future. So yeah, for sure, you should be having conversations about CloudHub 2. I also see a question on transitional vCourse licenses during the transition. So I can, among the customers that we've had several customers that have actually transitioned from CloudHub 1 to CloudHub 2. And during this process, we've seen one of two things happen. Several times these customers have sufficient buffer in terms of the purchased vCourse. They've not used up all of their entitlements, so they could just eat into their existing entitlements. If there is a need for more entitlements, we've seen cases where customers work with their account teams. So you get a time-boxed entitlement for a period of your migration, which will be like, I think, two or 3 months. You get some additional entitlements to enable you to go a little over if required. This is also something that we're considering as part of our upgrade tooling to make sure that you have the flexibility, but in a time, we want to make sure it's for a certain duration of time. So there'll be limits on how long the migration can go on for. But this is definitely something that you can bring up with your account teams as you consider your migration.
I'm conscious that we're running out of time here. We have a minute left of the session. Is there one final question any of our panelists would like to address? Oh, Sabrina's jumping on.
We have time for one more question, and then I can wrap us up.
Okay, fabulous. I'm going to let you pick, Ratisha. There's a few technical ones in the Q&A.
Let's see.
At the top. I can say, secret manager, I don't know, I want to let you pick the one you want to answer.
I think the one that's been coming up is auto-scaling. Is it only limited to horizontal, or do we want to support vertical as well? How does it work with entitlements? So vertical, what we've done is we've supported horizontal pod auto-scaling. Vertical pod auto-scaling is something that requires, sort of an in-place resource resize for replicas that are running in CloudHub 2. Because it uses Kubernetes-based architecture underneath, right? So that in-place resource resize is still in an alpha stage in Kubernetes. So we're tracking, it's definitely on our roadmap for vertical auto-scaling, but currently what we support is horizontal pod auto-scaling. Yeah, I don't know if...
Cool. I think maybe we can close it out there. This won't be this may be the first, but it won't be the last of our CloudHub 2 upgrade sessions, especially as the year progresses. We'll be coming out with more content and we'll be hosting more of these sessions. So yeah, stay tuned for that, I'd say.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. Thank you to our attendees. Thank you to our presenters. Really appreciate it. Great session. We will be sharing the recording likely early next week. It'll be available at the meetup page. And I will also send out an email to all of you who attended with the recording as well. And with that, I just want to say thank you. And thanks for joining us. We'll see you hopefully next week at our next meetup event with the online English group about API management. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks, Rajesh. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.